We don't have much time. We're going to discuss and Pesach. Pass it down. Bailey's not here. Oh. I know. The Sicha in Hebrew, the one was stapled. Have you ever read?
Is it all the pages packet?
No, what do you mean by
We
that?
need our all.
No, this is the only one was stapled. The rest of them weren't stapled.
Oh, so.
Yeah.
Well,
It's a whole bunch of pages. Starts from Chav Ches and then go over here. We start from your test. Here's where it starts. It's in Hebrew. You can see. Oh, there's actually the stapled. Maybe I have a stapled one. Easier to. Okay. So as we said, we only have 2 weeks for Pesach learning, so we're going to learn a Sicha about Pesach. And this topic of the Sicha is that Pesach, Adar Pesach, actually has 2 other names. In chronological order, Zman, how does the Chumash refer to this Yontif? The Chumash, Makatov, Vadot Chag, Eza Shem.
Chag
HaMatzos. Where do we have, who instituted Zman Cheruseinu? Who are the institutors? Not you don't find it in Chumash, the word Zman Cheruseinu, that's not in Chumash. They're B'tfilah. That were instituted by the men of great assembly, Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. How many of them were there? How many great men of great assembly were there? Is this 120? You know who they were? Some of them? Oh, you're here. Oh. What a relief.
Sharon, thank you.
You're here, I'm here. They're all special. Okay. Special films. Okay, so honestly, it consisted of 120 great rabbis who lived right after during they actually instituted not only parts of Tefillah, but they also brought back Judaism, brought back the Jews. They were living right by the beginning of the building of the second Beis Hamikdash. Guess who was one of them? Mordechai, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, Ezra, Nehemiah, Chagi, Zechariah, Malachi, and the whole list goes on. The last one was Shimon HaTzadik. He's mentioned in Pirkei Avot. Shimon HaTzadik, Hayamish Yarek, Knesset Hagdolah. He was from the remnants, the last of the remaining men of great assembly. Is called Shimon HaTzadik. So many years after the Chumash, after Moshe Rabbeinu's years, we have the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah around the year 300-400. So we're talking about 2,300 some odd years ago is when the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah lived, and they were metaken in the Tefillah of our Shmoneh Esrei. You say Yom Chag HaMatzot Hazeh, V'titlan Hashem Elokeinu b'Yahar b'Moadim Hasimcha, Yom Chag HaMatzot, Zman Cheruteinu. We add that into our Shmoneh Esrei, also in our bench, in our Shmoneh Esrei. Ma'ariv and Shacharis and Musaf, throughout all the and Mincha. Then later on in history, in the time of the Talmud, and now today, what do we call the Yom Tov? Pesach. If I were to say, what are you doing for Chag HaMatzos? What? We know what I'm talking about. Are you going to be clean for Chag HaMatzos? Call it Pesach. Pesach is not mentioned in the Chumash. Yes, the Korban Pesach, yes, but not the holiday. The holiday in itself does not have the name Chag HaPesach. That's new, relatively new. So the Rebbe, this Sicha, the Rebbe is going to explain, why does this holiday have 3 names? It's not just, well, why not? In Yiddishkeit, in Judaism, everything is b'diuk b'tachlit. It's hard to tell. I want you to pay attention
Right.
because one thing this generation can't do, concentrate. Oh, that's not nice, Rabbi. I just say that. Maybe it's only in my class, but well, the boys for sure can't. They have no concentration whatsoever. They're all ADHD, a million times over.
To the boys or to the girls?
The boys, girls,
Only to the boys, to the girls, no?
right?
Yeah.
Girls-
It's a for the
Girls
girls.
are whatever. The boys sleep. That's the problem. They fall asleep and they're not ashamed to. Yeah, I know some, not me, but I know some teachers where they bring the pillows, the kachila. They bring the pillows into the class. Where are you sleeping? Where are you sleeping? You know how that feels? You become a teacher, you'll see how that feels. It's worse than arguing. You argue and say, I think when you're making a mistake, Rabbi, I don't mind that. At least you're listening. And I have some value. But you could argue with me. But when someone just walks out, I mean, you can walk out if you need to, but just walks out like, okay, this is not for me. Or I know something's wrong. I blame it on myself, not on you. You'll see when you'll be a teacher teaching someone, you'll see how it feels. You know, oh, I know, I should not have done that in this rabbi's class. It's hurtful. Okay, but the present company excludes. I'm not talking about you. I'm just talking in general. This is different. No one does that here. Yeah. Okay, so in Yiddishkeit, the fact we have three names is perfectly precise, not just by, give it a name, why not? And not just that the three names are precise, the order, chronological order that once upon a time, in time of the Chumash was called Chag HaMatzos. Later on, by the men of great assembly, who instituted much of our prayers in the Shemon Esrei, it got a second name, Zman Chilutenu, the time of our exodus, our freedom, our emancipation, our liberation. That's a new name relative to the Chumash, and then the most recent name is Chag HaPesach. You go in order. Now, for the Sicha, what exactly is supposed to happen to us? What happened on Pesach? Yeah, we went out of Mitzrayim. But what happened to us? We became a new people. We were born. In the Pesach in Yechezkel, chapter 16, it says the Jewish people were born. It was a birth that took place. Golus, Mitzrayim, as compared to pregnancy. We were impregnated in the womb of Egyptian culture. We were submerged, embedded, concealed in the Egyptian lifestyle. Jews were involved in idol worship. This is why the Malachim, the not good Malachim, were saying, why should you save the Jews? By Kriyas Yamsuf. These worship idols and these worship idols. They retained their identity. They didn't change their name, by the way, and they dressed Jewish, but they were involved in Goyish things in the Egyptian culture. As we say, it's easier to take the Jews out of Egypt than to take the Egypt out of the Jew, which is why the Geula of Mitzrayim was not a complete Geula. It's not the Abish's fault, because we are the problem. We couldn't take this Egyptian lifestyle out of our system. So in order to become a free people, but it doesn't mean free from Paro slavery, it means to become a new entity, a transformed people, a Torah people. Rab Sadia Gaon, you ever hear Rab Sadia Gaon? He lived before Rashi. He lived about 1,000 years ago. From the Gaonim. Rashi is from the Rishonim. You have the Gemara, you have Tanoim, Amoraim, Rabbanan Spuroi, Gaonim, 500 years of Gaonim. Then you have finally the Rashi from the second generation of Rishonim. So before Rashi, Rab Sadia Gaon, he's called. Sadia Gaon says the following words: Umosenu einenu uma ki'im b'toiro mitzvah. Our nationhood, we're not a nation like other nations. Americans live in America, and English live in England, and Italians live in Italy. They live in a certain country, which makes them, we call them by this name. The Jews were all scattered. How long did we have Eretz Yisrael? For most of our life, of our history, we were not in Eretz Yisrael, we were in Golus. What makes us a nation? What do we have in common with thousands of years ago, Jews thousands of years ago. The Romans don't have in common. The Romans are gone. Imagine, there's no goy today who can relate to their ancestors of 3,000 years ago. They wouldn't talk the same. What are you talking about? There's no common thread. Our nationhood is based on Torah and Mitzvah, and that's why we are eternal. We survive, we thrive. Yes, there's pogroms and all these things happen to us. We suffer more than any other nation, but we survive because you can't destroy eternity. The Jews became an eternal nation. We became a Torah nation. Wow. From being submerged in Egypt to becoming a Torah nation, it's a long journey. And the journey goes through 3 steps. The Matzah step, Man Cherusenu step, phase 2, phase 3, Chag Pesach. What are these 3 phases? That's what the Sicha is about. Pesach was the 3rd one, the final one. In English, I'll call it like this. The first step is self-surrender, self-abnegation, bittul. I'm still talking about what bittul is. People get a wrong idea of what bittul is. Putting yourself aside, getting rid of all the blockages that do not allow you to be who you really are. Self-abnegation, number 1, that's Chag HaMatzos. Man Cherusenu is self-actualization. To become, not just to get rid, to be mevatel, to nullify, to abnegate, but to actualize, self-assertion. To find yourself, not to lose yourself, to find yourself. And then there is self-transcendence. Pesach needs to jump. Self-transcendence. So it's self-abnegation, self-actualization, and self-transcendence. To become a Torah nation, from being submerged in the Egyptian culture to becoming a Torah nation, 3 stages. The Rebbe is going to explain clearly the 3 stages and how they fit with the names Matzah, Cherus, and Pesach. You could already see, what does Matzah sound like? Flat, no ego. But we're going to soon talk about what no ego means. It doesn't mean a lot of people who are internally, they have an internal ego. They're not humble internally. They're very humble externally. They're sweet. They're nice. There's no arrogance. There's no narcissism at all. They're very, very, they'll go out of their way to help someone. Very nice person. Person's so humble. You'll see deep down, internally, there's a lot of issues there that are far from what the humility we're talking about in this Sicha. It's a hard, very, very dangerous, seemingly dangerous and difficult path of having the real bittul. I'll discuss it in a minute. Okay, so these are the 3 steps, 3 stages, 3 phases, 3 shlavim to get to your journey, to the end of your voyage. We embark, we begin, matchilim, the matzot. Matzah is flat. Matzah doesn't rise like chametz. Matzah is tasteless. Not supposed to have any taste. And people like matzah. I do. I can eat it a whole year. But you don't serve matzah at a banquet or a wedding, as a main dish. You probably don't like it either, right? You wait for the pizza, the line of pizza after Pesach. Man Cherusenu is after Pesach. You suffered, God, but did so much for you. 7 days. By the way, before getting into the 3 levels, I want to just mention something very interesting with Levi Yitzchak Barditchev. He didn't talk about the middle level. He talked about the Matzah and the Pesach name. And he says, why do we call it Chag Pesach? And why does the Torah call it Chag Matzah? It's a love story. God is in love with us, and he brags about his spouse, us. And we, the wife, brag about our husband, Avinu Shebashamayim. Chag HaMatzos, Hashem says, wow, what a nation. What a nation. Look how they clean for Pesach. And they're worried about 1 drop of matzah, and chas v'shalom, if water spills, a drop of water, they wouldn't eat it. If matzah falls on the floor, there's nothing trape on the floor, they wouldn't eat it. In fact, our minhag is that if a vessel, a keli falls on the floor, we don't use it for Pesach, we use it next Pesach. You know that? There are a lot of chumras. It's not easy to observe Pesach. And you can go beyond the level. They go wild in making sure they don't get falter in 1 drop of chametz. Wow, what a people. I didn't even tell them you have to be that from. And they go beyond. And also, don't forget, when Jews came out of Egypt, there's a Zacharti la chesed neorayach ahavat klo. I remember that you had nothing. You were rushed out of Egypt. You couldn't even bake normal baking. You had to have, you were rushed. That's why there was matzah. There was no chance for the dough to rise. And you ran out of Egypt, not knowing where you're going to get your next supply of food. You trusted in me. I remember that. Look what a nation I have. I digress, but I have to digress for a second. You want to know what a nation we have? We have a Jew on October 7th, October 8th, maybe the next day, saved on 750 Jews. He was almost killed, went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth to save people's lives while he was being shot at. His car had about 1,000 bullets and no one was hurt. And he was not happy. I could have saved him more. He's now from, by the way. Went to the oil and he's a different person altogether. So Hashem says, who is like, there's nobody like the Jewish people. Nobody like them. They're an amazing people. Just this one Jew who went out and risked his life and saved 750 people. And what did he say? Hashem, I'm a hero. No. Kaval, I could have saved more. And was downtrodden. He couldn't sleep at night. Why didn't he save more? What he described was there, what he saw, you don't want to hear. So this is how Hashem brags about the Jewish people. And what do we call it Pesach? Why do we call it Pesach? Hashem jumped over the houses. He skipped our house. You know what? This is Moshe Leib Sosova, the Rebbe. When Hashem jumped over the houses, he skipped the Jewish house. You jumped. Yeah, he skipped. Pesach means to skip. Guess what he was doing when he skipped over the Jewish house? He was dancing. Oh, he said in Yiddish, Do leptayid, here a Jew, God was dancing from Simcha. Here's a Jewish home. Shalom Aleichem. Next. Ayid. Next. Hashem was dancing with his love for the Jewish people. So we call it Chag Pesach. We are in love with Hashem. We brag about, look what he did. He jumped with Simcha when he passed over our houses. He was angry at the Egyptians, at the Hamasniks of that generation. And when he saw a Yiddish house, he embraced us. He danced. He danced with a Simcha, like he danced at a wedding. Then he went to the next house and he danced again. So we call it Pesach. It's interesting. Which mitzvah is mentioned in the whole parsha of Yetzias Mitzrayim? Which mitzvah do the men have where Yetzias Mitzrayim is on their head and on their hands? Tefillin. We wear tefillin. Hashem wears tefillin. In our tefillin, what does it say? Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And his tefillin, what did it say? Pasuk in Chumash. Umi ka'amcha ki Yisrael goy achabarat. Who was like the Jewish people, one nation in the world? So it's a love story, back and forth. That's why the tefillin mitzvah is in the parsha of Mitzrayim. Okay. Now let's see Pesach Sicha inside. It's in Hebrew. And I'm going to discuss outside what does bittul actually mean. It's very, very deep. It's not what you think. It's something very scary to do it. And you got to be careful. And that's what people fear the most. And it's almost incapable for a person to really do it. We'll give it an example with a Rav and a Talmud. We'll see a teacher and a student is the metaphor the Rebbe gives. Okay. Chag HaMatzot manche Reteinu Chag HaPesach HaMashmot Shel Gimel Shemot Elu. What is the implication of these three names? Aleph. Hachag Nikra B'Shlosha Shemot B'Torim. Three different descriptions, names of the holiday. Aleph. In the Chumash B'Torah Shebiksav Nikra, it's called Chag HaMatzot. Beis. In the tefillah, in the davening format in Shemona Esrei Nikba, it is established lahosif, to add. When you say Chag HaMatzot, we also add Zman Chen Reteinu. Gimel, in the language of our Razal, Rabbi Seinu, Zichron Livracha, in the Gemara, and nowadays, Gam B'Lashon B'nei Adam Nikraim, all the 7 days of Pesach, not the Korban Pesach, but the whole holiday is called Kol Shivat or Shmonat Yamim. It's 7 days in Israel, 8 days in the diaspora. Gam b'shein Chag HaPesach. It's also called Chag Pesach. Says the Rebbe says v'yesh lomar the Chag yesh nikud klalit. There's a general focal point. V'tochan ikri, and a very important theme. V'tochan nikud azu, the theme of liberation, the theme of becoming a liberated person. liberated nation, Yeshnam Shlosha Inyanim. There are three phases, three steps, Sheboyim Libitui, which come to full expression and are expressed Bishlosha Shemot Ela, with these three titles of Matzah, Manchir and Pesach. And since Shagam Seder B'Torah Hu Hora'ah, that the order of the three names is also part of Torah, also a lesson in life, then it must be that all the lessons we learn goes according to their importance. So the first and foremost, the beginning, what we start with, which is the foundation of every level of journey to becoming a different type of people. The first step is Chag HaMatzot. The Chol Harosh Bo'inyan Chag HaMatzot. Hashem, the name of Torah Shebeksav, that's found in the written Torah in Chumash. Achrei Ken, we graduate from that first phase. We'll soon explain what the first phase is. We get to Zman Chirutenu, Shehu Matbeya, which is coined by the rabbis of the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, of the men of Great Assembly, Shetovu Chachamim, which the Chachamim coined. Who are the Chachamim? Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, men of Great Assembly. Le'amro b'tfilah, to say these words, Man Chirutenu, in Tfilah, Achrei Ken, and later on in the time of the Gemara, which is hundreds of years later, until today, it's called Chag HaPesach, Shemiskabel b'lashon razal, which is accepted in the verbiage, in the language of our sages in the Gemara and the Mishnah, u'b'lashon b'nei Adam, even today. Okay, so what he's saying here is Man Yitzias Mitzrayim in Beis, u'kemavur b'nebuos Yechezkel, as I said before, it's called Leidas Am Yisrael, a birth. A birth. Why is it called a birth? Why is the liberation of Mitzrayim considered to be a birth? The words, the letter Shin Yud Tzadik Yud Mem is an abbreviation of Shel Yitziat Mitzrayim. Why is the exodus of Egypt Mitu'eres? Why is it described the Lashon Leda with the word birth? Is not only Lo Rak Mishum Oz Hayazman Shebnei Yisrael Nasu La'am, because the Jews became a free nation. They were no longer in slavery, no longer enslaved by Pharaoh. They were not submerged. They were out. They were free, because that you could say about any nation. As that level of freedom, you could say not by every nation, not only by Jews. Gam, next page. Gam, turn to the next page like this. Page Chaf. Gam b'yachas, also in reference. Other nations also go through, emancipation from slavery. Lahavdil. To separate their type of emancipation from ours. That's not why it's called a birth. Why is it called a birth? Not just because, a baby is born. First, the baby is part of its mother, living inside its mother. Now the baby is outside. Now the baby is a self-contained entity. That's not the only reason why we call Yitzias Mitzrayim Leda, birth. Because if that would be the case, every nation goes through that process. Every nation that was enslaved would go through that process. Rather, when the Jews were transformed into a nation, they became were they not enslaved anymore, they were transformed into a whole different entity. They're not the same people anymore. These are different people. Not just their circumstances changed, they became a metamorphosis, a complete Mesiut Chadasha. Hatachlit ma'kavana, the ultimate goal, v'hashlemut, now, interestingly, if you go out of Mitzrayim and you're free and you don't get the Torah, you're still in Mitzrayim. Matan Torah is not a holiday of its own, by the way. It's almost like the whole in between is Chol HaMoed. Not really, completely, but it's similar. Shavuos is the finale of Pesach. That's why, interestingly, there's no set date. Ein tarich. Lo katuv tarich b'Shavuot. Pesach is Teshvav Nisan. We know when Pesach is 15th of Nisan every year. 15th Nisan. Sukkot, when is Sukkot? 15th of Tishrei. When is Yom Kippur? 10th of Tishrei. Rosh Hashanah, out of Tishrei. Purim, Yudalad Adar. Shushan Purim, Teshvav Adar. When is Hanukkah? Okay. Listen. There's one holiday that doesn't have a date. You know why? Because the holiday all depends on Pesach. It's the 50th day from Pesach. Therefore, interesting, Shaila, if you travel after Pesach, you travel to Australia, You go past the international date line, so you're Sphera. You're behind the Australians. You're 1 day behind them. Your American time. They're ahead of you a day. There's an interesting shiloh. You might have to keep Shavuos a day later. Your Shavuos doesn't depend on any date. It depends on when you finish your count. If you haven't finished your count, even though the people in Australia have finished their count, your Shavuos will be a day later. So Shavuos is related to Pesach and the counting of the Omer. It depends. It's a hamster. And also, if you look into Shulchan Aruch, there's no Hilchos Shavuot. There's Hilchos Rosh Hashanah, Hilchos Yom Kippur, Hilchos Sukkah, Hilchos Pesach. There's no Hilchos Shavuot. Why? It's under the heading of Pesach. You'll find, where do you find the laws of Shavuot? All the Minhagim that we have? At the end of the laws of Pesach. Indicating that if you don't receive the Torah, you have not left Mitzrayim. You might not be enslaved to the Pharaoh, but you're enslaved to your own instincts. You're still not a free person. And that's what we're going to talk about. What does it mean to be enslaved? Much deeper than just people think, well, we have a Yetzer Hara, we have an ego, we have this, and that's also enslaving us. There's something a lot deeper than that, which the people we'll talk about. Okay. So, the Rebbe says over here, the third paragraph, which is in brackets. You don't have to, there's no date for Shavuos, no set date. It all depends when Pesach, when the Sphera ends. Back in those days, by the way, we're able to have, today we have exactly a certain amount of days between Pesach and Shavuos. That's why it's always on the 6th day of Sivan. But it could be on the 5th and the 7th. Because if Nisan has 30 days today, Iyar has 29. If Nisan has 29 and Iyar has 29, Shavuos come faster. If Nisan has 30, Iyar has 30, it'll take longer to get this. Shavuos will be delayed a day. So it doesn't have a specific date. Okay. Why? Because it's part of the journey of going out of Mitzrayim. It's all it's a continuation, a continuum of Yetzias Mitzrayim. But the Rebbe always would scream, don't scream, let my people go. Let my people go, and a very important word you're leaving out. Va'avaduni. Shalachas ami va'avduni. Let the people go and serve me. If you just let my people go, where are they going? Going crazy. Where are they going? They're in limbo. They're nishtaher, not here, not there. Without Matan Torah, the whole Yetzias Mitzrayim is meaningless. For other nations, it means a lot. We're free to do what we want. For the Jewish people, if you're not living a Torah life, you're not one with Torah, not a Torah entity, then you haven't really left Mitzrayim. Let's finish this. Lahorot, the second line of that third paragraph, which has the brackets, Lahorot, at the end of the line, Lahorot, to indicate, to teach us, Sheshvuot Matan Torah, who Hemshech is a continuum, the Yetzias Mitzrayim, to the Leidas Am Yisrael. Without Matan Torah, we're not really born yet. Kolomar, to Leidas Am Yisrael, Kshurim Bozesh and Nasim Am Shel Torah. The birth of the Jewish people is much more than going free from Egypt. It becomes a Torah nation. Kol Amahu Shel Yehudi Gam B'Yachid, even an individual, he Torah. Every individual Jew, his whole essence is Torah, whether he realizes it or not. Okay. And then he says here further, this new entity that the Jews were transformed in, becoming a Torah people, Einena Rak is not only Mishum Shebegolos Mitzrayim, because the Jewish people in Egypt, while they were in Golos, Hoyu Yisrael, but Shval HaMatzav Yoter, they were at a very low level. They were tortured. There was genocide against them. They were persecuted. It's not just that because they were in Egypt, they weren't vessels, receptacles to receive the Torah. The Adar, on the contrary, they were really sunk in the 49 gates of Tumah. Their status was antithetical to Torah and Kedusha. They were living a terrible lifestyle that is very the antithesis of Torah. This is not the only thing. That's a problem, but that's not the only reason as to why Jews were not Caleb. The reason why Jews were not able to receive the Torah is not because they were lost in Egypt. Even if they wouldn't be lost in Egypt, There's something very powerful about Torah. To become a Torah nation is a very heavy voyage. And the Jews went through that. It's not just the absence of slavery, the absence of being persecuted. That doesn't make you a keli. Of course, when you're persecuted, your mind can't focus, obviously. But even if you're not persecuted, to become a Torah nation is a complete a changeover, a metamorphosis. It's not normal. So the Rebbe says here, why is it abnormal and hard to even imagine how it's possible for a Jew, for a human being to become a Torah person? Because what is Torah? The Ikar Mitzadeh is primarily because Torah is Etzloi Amun. It's Hashem's playful toy. It's God. It's holy. Chemda, Shegnuzalach, that was treasured by Hashem. It's completely removed from anything that is in this world. We're human beings. How can a human being become divine? Well, therefore, it was something completely new, much newer than going from slavery to freedom. That's a joke of a contrast compared to becoming not only a free people, from going from freedom from Egypt to becoming a Torah nation. It's a greater jump than going out of Egypt from being in Egypt. You understand what I'm saying? Being enslaved and tortured to being free, pretty big jump, right? That jump is a much smaller jump than after you already are free to become a Torah nation. That's a complete metamorphosis in English, a transformation. For that, you have to go through 3 stages. Okay, so we'll see what the 3 stages are now. Let's see page 20, the next page. I'll go to Gimel. 3 different movements, motions in your voyage that you are embarking. 3 different levels of what's going on in your psyche. And he gives the example of the Rav and the Talmud. Well, in Yuvon, this thing will be understood. Page Chaf Aleph. You have the page right here, Chaf Aleph. Well, Inyan, I don't know if you're following. I'm trying to. I know this is not in English, but we have to learn Hebrew a little bit, right? Shira, we have to learn Hebrew. Well, Inyan Yuvon, enough English. Inyan Yuvon, the matter will be understood. Bidugma, giving a parable rather. Mehaseder, of the order which a Rav teaches a student. Not a regular Rav and a regular student. We're talking about something much more intense than a regular teacher-student relationship. Don't mention it. Shabo Rav lomed in Talmud dvar seichel kazeh, an idea shehatalmud mitzad atzmo, where the student on its own, al yidei seichel ha'ishli shelo, through his own personal level of intelligence, cannot in any way, shape, or form reach. It's a paradigm shift. It's not just a new idea that I never knew. It's a new way of thinking that you're not used to. And here is the problem. People have, it's called, what's it called again? We have in our minds, what's the word I'm looking at? There's neural pathways where this is how we cope. We cope by having filing cabinets in our mind where everything fits. We have figured things out. We have a certain way of how we think, and we feel comfortable because we are satisfied, even though we might not have a life that's so satisfying. The life isn't working out so well, but we certainly have what we call a coping mechanism of the way we think. Very often, when you sit and listen to someone, you're not listening. You're giving your opinion already. Oh yeah, that I learned in a different class. Oh yeah, that fits. You put it into some filing cabinet called neural pathways. We have billions of them, and a human being is able to. You can't help it. Even if you try, being as open as possible, it's very difficult. You can't help matching what's being said to the way you think. Oh, that's boring. That's interesting. That's interesting. Oh, I can use that for my next speech. Oh, wow. Okay, I'm fine. So it's enhancing your way of thinking, but it's not, you're still a keli that's full. You're not what we call in Gemara Baruch klei rekon. You don't have this real, complete humility of, I know nothing. Not that much matter. I want to hear what's being said. I don't want to hear my opinion of what's being said. I don't want to hear me think what you're saying. I want to hear you talking. Most people don't do that. because there's fear. Become vulnerable to open up and not hear yourself think. Just hear the thoughts being said by the teacher is very, very difficult. Sometimes it's because of a lack of trust. Who knows? Maybe they'll put something in my head that will ruin my way of thinking and it's destroy my way of thinking. And I'll become like a zombie. I'm afraid. I don't want to, I have a coping mechanism. I want to keep my neural pathways because it makes me feel good about myself. I feel safer by maintaining the way I think. I don't want to go to a new, untreaded ways. It's scary. It's very scary to have this level of humility of putting yourself aside completely, opening up. Which is why Rabbah, learned this also in the wedding mimer, the cousin, your cousin, Mr. Shem is going to be saying a mimer. Going to mention, amen. Mr. Shem very soon. I want you to stay a little longer in the class, but very soon it'll all happen to you. Take your cousin. And by the way, in the summer I taught to the girls the mimer that the Kafanim learned for their so how old to know what the cousin is learning, what he's saying over at the Kabbalah Funim, Usually the women are talking to it, they don't even hear. But it's good for the Kabbalah to know what the cousin is saying. And it's all about a lot of interesting things. But one of the things it mentions is the Rabbah, both the Gemara and Sefta Shabbos, Rabbah, before he'd give a shir, when they sat when he was learning, teaching to them, they were like in awe, not in awe of what he could do to them, in awe of his incredible power, and they were completely open. They had the ability of opening themselves up. Their ego, their neural pathways were flattened. There's no me. There's just you. But how did Rabbah manage to succeed in having them do that? He made them at ease. He said a joke. And he said some good jokes. And when he said a joke, they started laughing, and they felt, he's not scary. We can trust him. He laughed at the things we laugh at. He can cry at things that we cry about. There's a kinship. There's a camaraderie. There's a connection. Oh, now we want to be buckled. We have to have the wanting. So the joke is to give you the wanting and desire and trust. And don't be afraid to open up and be vulnerable. Don't be afraid. That bittul is called the bittul of matzah. The matzah is flat. You don't even hear yourself. Don't even hear your excitement. Sometimes you're excited. Oh, wow, I'm going to get something. I'm going to really, wow, I heard the guy teach it great. It's very good. Wow, I can't. If you have the excitement while you're listening, even though it's a good excitement, that should be before. That excitement, shut it down. Don't hear yourself feel excited. Don't hear anything, just what's being said. Not easy at all. Sometimes it's kind of scary to do that. But sometimes you have a good reason to be scared. Because if you go to a class, you don't know who the teacher is, you don't know if this person is doing things that help in Torah, or it might be against the Torah. Very subtle. I know there were programs that people went to try to help them psychologically, and it turned out to be a branch of Avodah Zarah. I'm not going to go into the details. It was very subtle, and they make people feel so good, and they open yourselves up to that. Be careful. So you have to know what you're opening yourself up to. And sometimes people are afraid. I'm comfortable with what I know now. I'm comfortable with my filing cabinets. I don't want to put anything. I don't want to empty it. So that bittul is a very, very difficult bit. It's a very difficult task, but it's a must. If you don't have that, if your keli is full, they tell a story with a guy who made a trip around the world, and he heard about a professor he wanted to learn from, and he said, "Oh, I've traveled the world abroad. Teach me purpose in life. Teach me everything. Teach me. I'm open." So he said to him, "Would you like me to have a cup of tea first?" "Oh, sure. I'm thirsty. I pour the cup of tea, and he pours, doesn't stop pouring, and it's running over the kid. What are you doing?" I said, "This is the problem. Your cup, your head, also a cup in Yiddish, cup is full. You're full of yourself. We don't mean arrogant. You think you're smarter than me or something. No. But you're full of the way you think. You're not a keli. All I'm going to do is throw out my ideas to you. You're just going to understand it your way. You're going to implement it through your pathways, and it's not going to be what I'm teaching you. Empty yourself, because if I just pour and pour and pour, it's going to spill over."
But How we can thank you.
How? How do you go about doing it? Not easy. You have to want to do it. And it's very, very difficult. The way is to have the full belief that what you're being said is it's a paradigm shift. It's something completely beyond yourself. It's scary to go beyond yourself. How do you go about doing it? That's the power of Pesach. The power when Hashem gave us the mitzvah of matzah, just like the matzah is flat, He gave us the power that in the future, when we're going to be in the Kabbalah Torah, we'll have this ability. With the matzah we eat by Pesach, matzah has vitamin E. You know that? You know what vitamin E is? Vitamin emunah, not vitamin E. Emunah can be skin deep. Vitamin E is good for your skin. Emunah can also be skin deep. Maybe that's why it's connected. It vitalizes your emunah. And here's an interesting shit here, by the way. Generally speaking, when you eat healthy food, you don't have to know why it's healthy. But if you don't know why it's healthy, it's not gonna help you. You eat healthy food, you'll be healthy. Unhealthy food, you won't be healthy. Whether you know about it, whether you understand how it works or not. Matzah on Pesach for 7-8 days will automatically give you a feeling of kinship with Hashem, like He's your father, like you feel to a regular father and mother, not a parent. Without knowing how, just like a baby. How does a baby know that the parent is not father to father? Baby doesn't understand how the father became the person, the baby's father. Kesher, a kesher. It's a kesher atmi. And you feel comfortable. You rely, you trust. It's kashrut, atmi. The matzah does that. That's why it's so important to give out matzah to people not yet from. In addition to the observance of a mitzvah, it also vitalizes their emunah. What more do you want than having a mitzvah that by its very ingredient on Pesach, it has emunah ingredient in it? It's no longer the same after Pesach. The matzah will not have the same ingredient. After Pesach, it's not going to give you any, not going to strengthen your emunah. But matzah throughout the 7 or 8 days of Pesach, the vitamin is still there. Yeah. You're asking how does it? When Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim and He gave us a mitzvah of matzah, this is what gives a Yid the ability to have this wanting, this desire to open up in general, to open up not just to be a person who has the ability to be humble and flat, and take all your geschmack. Because usually when a person says, that was geschmack, that's not matzah. Matzah is just listen. I know it doesn't feel so good when just listening and you're not able to give your opinion yet. You're able to feel the enjoyment of what's being said. That's not matzah. That's also good, but that's not what we need. To become a Torah nation, you have to be completely, just like when it comes to a regular mortal teacher, you have to be that way if the teacher is way beyond. Imagine to become a Torah thinker, to think the way Torah thinks, be a Torah type Jew, it ain't easy. So you have to go through stage 1. Yeah, what do you want to ask? Yeah.
Coming here, my understanding was we're supposed to learn everything we can, integrate it, and bring it into the world.
Right.
So if we're not integrating it while we're learning it.
You have to integrate, but not stage 2. Stage 1, before you integrate, you have to know what you're integrating. You have to create a void. That's not an end in itself. This is just a means, a prerequisite for the next 2 stages. You're right. Just voiding gets you nowhere. You plant a seed in the ground. What happens before it grows? It rots. And the moment it rots, it starts to grow. It germinates. If you just have a rotten seed and then nothing grows, you're left with nothing. Likewise, when some talk about it, a person just says, okay, I'm humble, I'm nothing. I know nothing. I know zero. Even when I have my mind is crooked, I'm worthless. And whatever he said, I'll listen. That's like, it's like an empty keli, but it's broken, but it has a hole in the bottom. The keli can't have a hole. It has to be complete keli. We'll see what the next stage is. You have to have a keli that contains, that is not full of yourself, full of your neural pathways, but you also have to have a complete keli. Otherwise, whatever goes in goes right out. Empty is good. A good humility, not a bad, I'm a shmata, I give up. Okay, I don't give up. I'm not going to understand anyways, but who am I anyways? I'll just listen to whatever you have to say. That's not, you get nowhere. That's like having a broken keli. We want a complete keli shalem, lo kelim shavur. Keli shalem, aval reik. Lak lekabel, just to receive and to absorb. not to absorb with your way of thinking. Again, it's a paradigm shift. You're going into a different world, to a different way of thinking. Rabbi Zera, I want to tell you, Rabbi Zera learned the entire Talmud Bavli, the way he can understand Talmud Bavli. By the way, he's the same person that was killed by Rabbi. Remember Rabbi Zera story he learned? Who was in the class. We had a whole Sicha where Rabbi killed Rabbi Zera on Purim. Remember?
Yeah.
Saint Rabbi Zera went through Talmud Bavli. Sure, he understood Talmud Bavli, Babylonian Talmud better than we could. And he fasted 40 fast days to forget Talmud Bavli so he can embark on the journey of Talmud Yerushalmi. So much different was the way of thinking, the methodology, the method of thinking of the Jerusalem Talmud was so different that he had to forget the method of how he understood Bavli. Not that he forgot the laws, but forget the approach. The Bavli approach would blind his ability to be able to absorb a whole new paradigm shift, a whole new way of thinking. He fasted that he should forget the way he learned. Not the laws that he learned, the way he learned. The emotions, how his mind worked. To change the way you think is not easy. So look, עוד דבר ועוד דבר ועוד מושג ועוד מושג. To think differently, to think a whole different way, becoming a different person. Not easy. We feel very comfortable with that old way of thinking, makes us feel comfortable, we have our cap, exactly. But to give all that up, what's going to be put into that empty space? You got to be, it's always fear. The biggest obstacle to humility is not arrogance, it's fear. Fear of being being vulnerable and losing everything you have, becoming a zombie, and just becoming lost. So you have to have humility has to be preceded by trust, by a belief and trust that what you're listening to, what you're becoming is something much more powerful than yourself. So the next part of the Sicha, the Rebbe discusses Man Cheirusenu. The first thing is, let's just see the next part here. I know it's late, but I want to get to the second and third part, although it's a little hard to do that. Okay, so he gives a mashal to say with the Rav and Talmud, right? Go back to Gimel. It's something new. Not because he never heard it before, because it's higher, it's deeper than the way you could possibly think. You can't think this way. You're not capable of it. You want to, but you can't. First and foremost, what's expected, what's demanded of the student is a tenua, a movement, a motion of bittul, of self-abnegation. Put your way of thinking aside. Here's the stages. It's also mentioned in the wedding mimer. A Talmud Chacham who's sitting before his superior, his teacher. Your lips are shaking with awe and reverence. By maintaining your own neural pathways, your own method of thinking, you'll never be able to. You're going to just understand a watered down version of what's being said. You're not going to be able to take something that is greater than yourself. Only when you open yourself up, vacate yourself, when you become no longer an entity that blocks, that's when you become a keli. Empty out your keli. The Gemara says in Brachos, if you're full, you can't be machzik. If you're empty, then you have a chance of being able to contain. Machzik means to hold, to contain. But that's not enough. Now we go to step 2. Now we have to, after using that prerequisite of I voided all the blockages, I removed all that did not give me the ability to listen. I rejected, I removed everything that tries to maintain my old self. I got rid of that issue. Great. Now apply yourself. Now self-actualization. Now we want to internalize the new ideas. We want to internalize that which the Torah has to offer. And since you vacated yourself, since you went through the bittul process, the Chag HaMatzos process, Now we can now enjoy Zman Cheilutenu. What's Cheilus mean? Cheilus, the biggest the worst kind of slavery is to try to become something you're not. The happiest person is the person who's becoming what he or she is supposed to be. I heard this from my Rabbi Jacob. He tells me he was giving a class in Brooklyn, school in Brooklyn, I think, and was a college student there who was an NYU graduate, very successful, the valedictorian, and his parents were not from. They were not liking the fact they didn't want him to become frum, and on his own, everything was going well for him. He wasn't like, taking anything apparently. So Rabbi Jacob asked him, why are you here? What brought you here? You know what he said? I'll tell you a story. He said, when I was 4 years old, I remember for my birthday, my mother brought me a fish tank, goldfish. I love fish. And she brought me that. One day I'm sitting and watching how this fish is sitting for hours in one place. So boring. Then he moves to the other place. Bored. A 4-year-old kid is wondering, I can't sit in one place for so long. This fish must be suffering from boredom. I want to make the fish happy. He opens up the fish tank, takes the fish out. And lo and behold, he was right. The fish started dancing. Dancing. Oh, he was so happy. He actually made his bored fish happy. He put it down. Mommy, I made the fish happy. What did you do? I opened up the fish tank and took the fish out. What? He comes out and he's gadol shmei rabo. The fish died. So he says, I'd never forget that experience. I see people that don't know what they want in life. They're jumping around. Tonight, today they're here. Tomorrow they're there. They're traveling here, traveling the world, looking for everything. And they're busy dying. They're excited. They're enjoying, but they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what is life. They don't know who they are. They have an identity crisis. Then I see people who are sitting in one place. They can sit for hours and they're content. They're living. They're spending time. Maybe it looks bored for the outside world, but they are sitting and living. I wanted to taste what it means to live rather than what it means to die. I know dying may be more intense, but sometimes living, when a fish is in the water, it's where it belongs. That's where it's absorbing its life. The Man Cheirusenu is when we're able to really find who we really are. Like somebody said when he was given by his his nutrients, what to eat, what not to eat. What does he think he is? My body, I'll do what I want. I don't want to be limited. Your body needs certain nutrients. Some people have different blood, blood A, blood O positive, A positive, whatever, B positive, good B positive. Different kind of blood. I think whatever would be positive. I don't know if it's true or not. Depending on what kind of blood you have, that's what kind of foods are good for you. Depends on it. It's good for you. I'm not trying to limit you. I'm trying to enhance your life. Imagine if a violinist would have a violin and the strings of the violin would say, I can't stand it being stuck in the violin. I want to have pull me out of the violin so I can breathe some fresh air at the end of the violin. You pull the strings out. Or if a leaf is pulled off the tree, it dies. You pull a limb off a person's body, I want to have freedom. This brain is controlling my life. Tell me what to do. I'm sick and tired of being told I want to have my freedom. We all know what happens. The leg dies, the limb dies, the leaf dies, and everything dies. So sometimes it looks like it's limiting and it's not allowing you to be free. In Yiddish we say, as in Yiddish the word went off with derech, frei, you became free. That's the different kind of the wrong freedom. Free, no one can tell me what to do whatever I want. But the true chavis is when you're able to internalize and become a keli for something that's beyond yourself. That really is the true self. This is who you really are. Hashem says the Jewish people are a Torah nation. You have to work up to reach that level of who you really are. The Man Cheirusenu means when we can feel free to live up to our essential nature, who we really are. Step 2. Then there's step 3. Step 2, you're still limited. True, you're a keli, you're a vessel for infinity, but how big is the vessel already? How much can you take in the vessel? Hey, you're a keli for a new paradigm shift, for something beyond your way of thinking, but it's still your brain. And your brain is a keli. And a keli is limited. You can contain an ounce, It can contain 100 ounces. It contains gallons and gallons and gallons and gallons to fill up the Atlantic Ocean, but you're still limited if you're still at Kaylee. Or a student who absorbs, but he still doesn't think like a teacher. He's absorbing everything beyond his normal pathway, but he hasn't reached the teacher's level. It takes 40 years to hear something from your teacher and really understand where he was coming, or he or she was coming from. 40 years. It can't come right away. Pesach, the third level, is where you self-transcend, where you transcend. You're no longer a keli for the truth. You're a pipeline, like a open pipe that whatever the teacher says is not only contained by you, but it's like you're a conduit. The student himself or herself starts thinking like the teacher naturally, without having to be taught anymore. So that the teacher has created a teacher. A leader has created not a follower, but a leader. We have jumped over our normal self, transcended limitation, any limitation. And that's the finale, the final level of Matan Torah. There's much more to it, but this is the Nikuda of the Sicha where you got to go from self-abnegation, Pesach, Chag HaMatzos, and Man Cheruseinu is to live with Jesus Christ, but living on your level, and then there is transcending, self-transcending, jumping, transcending the human limitation. And where Hashem talks through, you become where words you say are naturally Torah words, without even thinking. You're like the teachers. The pipe is unlimited. The water goes right through. There's no limit how much water can go through. It goes through. And so the words of Torah just pass through your mind naturally. This is the ultimate level of becoming one with Torah, which is the Chag Pesach. It's all included in Pesach. Pesach gives us the strength to reach all these three levels. I also wanted to mention there are a lot of fours on Pesach, right? Why are there so many fours? 4 kashas, 4 cups of wine, 4 phrases of geula, 4 sons, 4 daughters. But there are 3 months, not 4 months. We have 4 matriarchs. So Rivka, Rachel, Leah. We only have 3 others. One of the reasons why there's so many 4s is because in which chus did Eden go out of the time? It's chus to women. Nashim Titkanias. They got us out of Egypt. Not like the men. The men were stuck with their Avodah Zarah. Women were never into Avodah Zarah. Not by the ego. They were much easier to convince that Avodah Zarah is not a way of life. So when it says Elu v'Elu, it refers mainly to the men. The women were not into it not as much, even while they were in Egypt. So it's the schus of the women who affected the men that we went out of Mitzrayim. And since there are 4 matriarchs, women are connected to the number 4. That itself has a reason. Why are women connected to number 4 and men number 3? So the answer is because Gimel is 3, right? Aleph Beit, Aleph 1. What's Gimel also mean in Hebrew? How do you say to bestow? Gomel, Gemilas Chesed. Gimel means to give. Dal means 4. Not really 4 meaning work with. The receiving end. Women are great receivers, and men are supposed to be great givers. Women know how to take what you can give it to them and make it better. Men have a problem. When a man gets old, he becomes a pet. Right. You see, when men get older, they start complaining that they can't do anything. They get weaker. They can't accomplish things. They can't go out and make things happen. A man can't sit in one place. It's very uncomfortable if he doesn't feel like he's able to accomplish and make something. Men need to be validated much more than women because they always feel like they're nothing. Men come from earth. Adam was created from earth. Chava was created from Adam. Adam, whenever you tell a man you're worthless, he believes you. He believes you. Men need to be validated. The worst thing a woman can tell a husband is when she's trying to fix the light bulb. One thing he knows how to do is fix the light bulb. He says, "No, I can do it." One thing I know how to do, you have to tell you can do it too. Men to be, because men, by the way, in halacha, the age-wise, your value is based on your age. Men depreciate very fast. Women depreciate much slower. Women know how to receive. Dalit is the lever is the number of recipients. Dal means poor, the power of receiving, enriching what you got. So that's just one little large. And I get to why we have so many fours on Pesach, because the fours are connected to the female, the qualities of the female, and that is why wine is rabbinical. Matzah is biblical. Biblical is God-giving. Rabbinical is receiving. The Jewish people receivers added a mitzvah of wine, 4 cups of wine. So we're like, the Rabbanim are like the women who are on the receiving end. And the Torah is like the masculine part. The Torah says 3 matzahs. The rabbis say 4 cups of wine. So there's more to it than that. There's a whole long thing. And that's Sicha about that, and I'll leave that for another time. Next week is the last Sicha class. Last Tuesday Sicha class for Pesach. I think the following Tuesday already in the Pesach Seder here. I don't mean the Pesach Seder, I mean the Seder, the classes are different. Okay. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for staying in the class. No one leaving. That was powerful.
It was very good.
People don't know about. It was very good to have you.
יכולה להגיד לי רק בעברית מה הכוונה, מה כן,
להיות תפילה היא תהיה כמו תפילה.
לא, כאילו, שכאילו, מה זה חופש אמיתי? כי אמרת שאנשים כל הזמן מחפשים בו, כאילו, מחפשים מפה לפה, והם לא ריבועים במפנים, כאילו, מה זה להיות במפנים? לא זמן. שאתה,
ללמוד תורה,
אוקיי.
להתקשר עם באמת.
אי אפשר גם וגם.